I hope you're ready for some illogic. Last time we went over week 2 of the Wooper Club League Season 6 Draft League and our battle against Steve Chuck and the Waterdeep Wobbuffets. Please go check that video out first if you have not done so already, as we took an in-depth look at the team breakdown, battle, post-battle breakdown, and post-game interview. It was an exceptional week as, spoiler alert, the Buffalo Bouffalants suffered their first loss of the season, the first on the channel after an undefeated run last season, as we fell to Steve and his well-played Flagon 1-0, leaving us at 1-1 with a +2 differential. Still good for, I want to say, third in the league. This time we've got the 0-2 Seattle Steamrollers coached by Chad. Timestamps for the team breakdown, preview battle, post-game chat, and interview will be in the description. But before we move on, you may notice that something looks a little odd with the screen. Sorry for the poor Photoshop job here. We did actually make a couple of transactions that will be in effect next week, not this one. However, doing this recording after the battle means that those transactions already reflected on the leak page, and thus we will have to settle for this poor Photoshop job that I had done, taken from the previous battle to make sure that nothing is spoiled for those transactions, which will be revealed at the beginning of the week next week. Without further ado, let's continue. Chad, who we're playing, has finished as the runner-up in this league 3 times, but has otherwise struggled this season with a couple of his personal demons in the league. He's got a pair of losses to very good coaches, and not getting any easier for him coming to us next. There's a definite theme to his team, and I think you'll be able to see that pretty quickly as we go through it. Tauros is his fastest member, followed by Charizard, Crocodile, G-Max Venusaur, Shiftry, Corviknight, Scrafty, Blissey, Ditto, Gastrodon, and Torkoal. Yep. This is a Sun team if I've ever seen one, which I have. Outside of the Torkoal and the Sun Sweepers, he has very bulky defensive cores, especially Corviknight and Blissey, specifically to annoy me, I'm sure. In the end, a lot of his team's success comes upon getting the right prediction plays, getting in the tanks at the right times, and getting in the Sun Sweepers at the right times. It's a bit of a precarious style, I think. It puts a lot of pressure on the walls to do their job, but I can see how it may be effective considering how effective those walls are. The positives of Chad's team have to start with getting Torkoal and G-Max Venusaur. It's an extremely effective combo, even in singles. Shiftry can help Venusaur break down its own checks. Charizard provides another breaker in the sun. It makes this offense so potent and so scary. Though Corviknight compounds a bit of the fire weakness, it otherwise complements the team very well, and Blissey as a special sponge is particularly noteworthy for most fire-type attackers, especially when you consider the abilities of Torkoal as a physical wall. As far as that goes, I feel like breaking through Torkoal is a great start to getting through the team, as it provides weather, physical defense, hazard control. That's a lot of pressure for a turtle that frankly isn't that good of a mon. Gastro is a cool defensive pressure as well that acts as an amazing fire resist, and has got a weakness that multiple team members cover oh so well. Crocodile's really good with Intimidate and knockoff support, and comes with a fast, powerful body. Oh yeah, and Ditto. One of the better ways to get around Stallymons like Corviknight or Blissey, as well as getting around the scary offensive threats, is to just boost up paths them. Nope, can't do that this week with Ditto looming as a threat. As for what he brings and leaves on the bench, I'm a little conflicted. I think I have a great matchup against many of his top threats, which may lead me to believe he won't bring them. Then again, they are his top threats, and I know he may want to play through those threats too. That, and he didn't really prep last week, so maybe he'll just bring the same 6 mons yet again. But then again, he may think of this as more of a rival matchup, and maybe he'll end up preparing a little more and discover some of his other threats are more important. Oh well, either way, I think Tauros is overall a bad bring for him. 2 mons that outspeed it and have very good matchups, plus plenty more with great defenses. Better Scarf candidates, I don't think it's doing much here. Now we're already in the tricky ones, as I'm going to say Charizard is probably next up for the worst matchups. Between Dragapult outspeeding, Sneasel as well, Scarf is like Zone as a threat, Mantine, T-Tar, Colossal basically invalidating it. Not great. Another weird pick, but I think that even without a fighting type, I have a good Blissey matchup. T-Tar can shut it down pretty easily with large subs and access to things like Taunt. Sneasel hits hard with fighting coverage. Sandaconda can G-Max and trap it, aside from the teleport of course. Colossal and Magnezone can click Body Press. Silvali's multi-attack is physical now. Even Vikavolt can just take a hit and Volt Switch out. We have another very weird one next, but Corviknight doesn't have the greatest time against me either. And that starts, of course, with Magnezone, who traps it and KOs it with absolute ease, forcing it to run Shed Shell or get smoked. Otherwise, Dragapult does well against it. Sneasel removes items, Silvali's typing can help potentially. Vikavolt and Colossal hit it with stab moves. Random fire coverage moves can get boosted by his own Sun as well to help me out. Finally, Ditto is very good, obviously, but I wonder if he'll bring it. I know Chad's been a bit disappointed in its performance so far, and I'd like to think I've done a very good job at handling Ditto in the past. meaning it may be time to set it down for a match. We'll still keep it in mind at every turn, of course, but still. Also keep in mind that Charizard, Corviknight, Blissey, and Ditto all came to Chad's Weeks 1 and 2 matchups. You could certainly bring them all again as a sort of comfort factor, but I think these other 6 team members are just better against me. Speaking of, I suppose we should just start with Torkoal. It's a big, physically defensive wall with the ability to run things like Yawn or Stealth Rocks, either of which would really ruin my day. But the most important aspect is obviously that Drought ability, which sets up 3 team members, one of which is Shiftry, the most notable physical attacker he has in the Sun. You can even go mixed and with a set of things like Heat Wave, Low Kick for coverage. It can ruin my day so fast, especially when it breaks down the checks for other Sun Sweepers. Gastrodon has great typing and resistances for my team, especially when you see that my good matchups against Gastrodon are not so good against the rest of his team. Grass is a really weird type to have coverage for, as we saw by my matchup last week against Rotom Wash. And otherwise, I need to rely on something like Toxic to wear out its recovers. In my opinion, definitely the superior wall over Corviknight this week, especially when I have 2 electric types I can threaten to bring. Krookodile is an incredible mon this week too, being a switch into a large amount of my physical attackers and poking away with strong knockoffs and an Earthquake that has very few resistances on my team. Additionally, this is probably the scariest threat for a Scarf, to let it outspeed things like Dragapult as well as Rock and Fighting coverage that do very well against my team this week. Speaking of, Scrafty is an excellent call as well, this second dark typing with Intimidate, also giving a bulky route to what Krookodile does. It's just a superior switch in this week compared to things like Blissey or Corviknight. That Fighting Stab is brutal, though I suppose Krookodile also has close combat. But the sheer bulkiness of Scrafty, especially with something like a D-Dance or Bulk Up and Rest set, could quite easily be too much for me to handle. Finally, you already knew that G-Max Venusaur was the biggest threat to this team this week. At times 2 speed and the ability to boost attack and special attack 2 times as well, not to mention the ability to G-Max, not to mention the Grass, Fire, Ground coverage, not to mention the G-Max move chipping away at my team every turn, not to mention the sheer bulkiness of Venusaur even outside of G-Max, not to mention, I think I've made my point quite clear. On my side, I actually have quite a few options of my own to deal with the Sun team. Stoutland will not be one of them, as it simply does not have the power to break through things like Corviknight, Torkoal, Gastrodon, or the plethora of Intimidators that could come my way. Zandaconda similarly fails. It's unable to work around Corviknight in particular, and it needs to carry Coil to boost around the Intimidators while being unable to give up the luxury of those turns. Tangela unfortunately needs to sit out again, as Chad simply has too much special fire coverage as well as knockoff abusers, not to mention the inability of Tangela to do absolutely anything to G-Max Venusaur. From there, I think the top 8 all had a place in the matchup, and it was definitely a difficult decision to cut any of them from the team. Colossal had an okay spot in the matchup, mostly in dealing with things like Charizard and Shiftry, but I decided against it as I didn't want to amplify the bad matchup against things like Krookodile or Gastrodon, and Venusaur can very easily carry Earth Power for Colossal too, not to mention Charizard also gets Scorching Sands now. It also didn't provide enough offensive pressure either, it just made it a little too tough to justify bringing. Fortunately, finally, I didn't get to bring up Magnezone this week. I really wanted to try and retake the kill lead in the league with Magnezone, but this is a bit calculated, as besides the obvious ground weakness that can be taken advantage of, and the lack of ability to deal with things like Gastrodon, I also made a call that Corviknight could very easily carry a Shed Shell if it does come. This is definitely a hard read in team building, but aside from Corviknight, Magnezone's use falls off pretty badly, and I didn't want to risk bringing dead weight when the rest of the team could handle Corviknight pretty well. That's going to bring us to these 6 team members to deal with Chad's team. We've got a cool mix of members here designed to beat both Chad's original team that he has been bringing, as well as the members I think have the better matchups. Either way, I'm expecting Sun, so I may as well start with my 2 mods I'm bringing to win the Weather War. Mantine is here specifically for Venusaur, with lots of special defense to tank even +2 G-Max Vine Lashes, and a Rain Dance to stop the Chlorophyll boost, while setting up the Hurricanes for myself. Hurricane should chunk Venusaur with Rain Dance, giving the perfect accuracy and slowing it down to at least allow for something else to revenge kill it. Toxic can chip away at anything not named Corviknight or that Venusaur, even forcing out Blissey. And Roost is good for longevity, so long as I keep in mind that Venusaur will have super effective grass moves on me when I Roost first in the rain. So yeah, Venusaur switch in, can be a Gastrodon switch in if I would like it to be, though I don't have immunity to Scald, and I'm pretty vulnerable to Toxic. It's a pretty good Scrafty check too with the flying coverage. Torkoal's day could definitely be ruined by having weaker fire moves, and it only really threatens the status at that point. Boots are important to me as well to make sure I can come in healthy against the Venusaur, as any residual could prove deadly. Finally, in Ditto-proofing the team, the only attacking move is Hurricane, meaning I can stay in and toxic the opposing Ditto, or swap into T-Tar, who lowers Hurricane's accuracy drastically and takes just about nothing from it. Speaking of course, the other weather setter here is Tyranitar, who has a super cool lefty set this week. Perhaps you remember Tyrannoboa, the sub-punch set that could beat Blissey. Well, he has the Blissey. And although I'm not going all the way with the special attacking coverage, I think the coverage is still complementary. Focus Punch just does so much damage to so many things, specifically taking advantage of things like Blissey, Scrafty, Crocodile on a switch, Tauros on a switch, Shiftry on a switch, and my favorite application being Corviknight, who, on a roost, will take double damage from the Focus Punch, losing its flying typing. If he lacks Body Press or Iron Head, he will be very hard pressed to even break my sub, as even U-Turn shouldn't knock it out. He can't exactly roost up on me either then, and Rock Slide does very good damage to it and things like Venusaur with the neutral hit. Taunt is of course to stop setup, so if Venusaur switches in on the sub, I can at least stop the setup right there and get in Mantine. It's a cool set. Focus Punch is such a cool move. With Adamant and Max Attack, it is going to hurt something fierce, and the 101 HP subs are standard for dealing with Blissey. The Ditto proofing is mostly sub, as it scouts him using Focus Punch, and if we don't flinch from Rock Slide, it can give me a free Focus Punch myself. Ditto simply cannot come in on this, unless I'm below a quarter of my HP or so. Moving right along to my other Tier 1, we've got Dragapult, and it's a Scarf set this week, because this can outspeed Venusaur in the sun, but also other Scarfers that can come, especially that Crocodile, which I think is very likely. U-Turn is very easy momentum, Draco Meteor chunks everything that isn't the Blissey or the Corviknight, Fire Blast hits the latter very hard, and chunks Venusaur even better in the sun. And then, of course, the Heat Tech move on Dragapult this week is Solar Beam, which is a one-turn move in the sun and has a 50-50 shot of OHKOing even a full Special Defense Gastrodon, as well as grabbing the Crocodile kill. Super cool set. It also resists Venusaur's non-ground attacks as an interesting option to get a hit off on it. It also provides a great switch-in into Torkoal, which has low Special Defense, and I have the ability to just U-turn out of Yawn. Shadow Ball may seem weird not to have this week, but he has several key immunities and resistances, including Blissey, Tauros, Shiftry, and Crocodile, while providing Ditto a free spam button against my own team. So, no Shadow Ball, and that's a good bit of Ditto proofing. Really, the only way he can get rid of the Dragapult if he swaps in the Ditto on it is to Draco, at which point I can easily revenge or get something up. So, next up, let's go over to the Silvally I've got for this round, because I saw that Flying was an amazing offensive type against him, and Multi-Attack is such a strong move. This is most likely my follow-up onto Venusaur if it isn't sunny. Say Mantine comes in, gets the rain up, gets a little bit of chip. This is probably the best revenge kill option. Even then, if Venusaur is still G-Max, Multi-Attack should be doing upwards of 70%. And it's also immune to ground and resist grass. Yeah, I'm pretty scared of that Venusaur, but this is a very nice safety net. Fire Fang is nice neutral damage to it, while hitting Corviknight especially hard in the sun. U-Turn keeps up the momentum. Defog is an emergency option this week in case hazards go up against my team, which is very weak to Stealth Rock this particular time around. Adamant means I can still outspeed Venusaur and below, so I look forward to this hitting super hard. And finally, the anti-Ditto strat with this is a little bit weird, so the interaction is strange. Ditto will copy the typing of Silvally, but it will not copy the multi-attack typing. And this actually makes Dragapult a great check in resisting or being immune to everything he's got. Or I can stay in with Silvally to get a good hit in if I'm healthy enough. That's also a big reason why I didn't opt for a Swords Dance set this week. I don't want that thing copying up my boosts. So next up we're going to have Vikavolt. Keeping up the momentum train with Volt Switch, we've got of course Energy Ball as the coverage for Gastrodon and Crocodile in one move. This is the big reason why I wanted to bring Vikavolt this week over the Magnezone. It can actually do something to the multiple ground types that I anticipate him to bring. Blissey is the only thing I really can't touch, which may have been a point for Magnezone to make Body Press, but the slow Volt Switch is definitely beneficial there, and I can just go right into T-Tar if that's what I want to do. Roost is again very nice longevity, paired with Leftovers, as I can see this as a piece I can swap into multiple times. And then Thunder Wave I thought was a pretty cool tech move. It's mostly there to punish things like the Venusaur or the Corviknight, and slows things down first, so that Silvally, even in the sun, can outspeed it. And, of course, Vikavolt itself can get its Volt Switch off on Corviknight without losing the flying typing from Roost. It's especially effective if Crocodile lacks rock coverage or if it goes down, as Energy Ball handles the electric immunities so well. This gives it the chance to actually do something about Venusaur. The Ditto proofing is pretty evident, as Vikavolt resists its own moves and can roost off the Volt Switch if desired, or just get the slow Volt Switch out on the incoming switch-in. The final member of the team is making its debut this season, and that is going to be Sneasel. Yeah, I'm so scared of Venusaur, I brought another option to revenge kill it with the Life Orb Ice Shard in the absolute worst case scenario, while also revenging Scarf Crocodile. Oh my goodness. Mind you, Knockoff is just so good and so strong when adamant, which still lets me outspeed Charizard by a single base point. And the Triple Axle, its new move for this gen, is amazingly strong. It does about half to Corviknight and around 80% to Gastrodon. Icicle Crash is a more consistent alternative if I only needed a little bit, but not too much. Physical Ice and Dark coverage is seriously great in the matchup, and Crocodile, Tauros, and Scrafty can't even get off the Intimidate, thanks to Inner Focus now preventing that this gen. Low Kick was also a possible option, but didn't really hit that much I needed to hit any harder, and factors into the anti-Ditto proofing of allowing me to stay in on a hit or swap into T-Tar much more easily on the Sneasel. So that's the team. I anticipate some nice cleanup from Sneasel this week. Dragapult and Silvally should be particularly effective as well. And it'd be really cool to see that T-Tar set put in a little bit of work. Let's head into the game. I'm not really sure where to begin with this one. Okay, I know exactly where to begin, and that is the missing turtle. No Torkoal was nowhere on my radar, as both modes I was prepping for leaned into an offensive Chlorophyll Venusaur powered by the sun, along with either Charizard or Shiftry to take advantage of it. The only one of those four here is Venusaur, who becomes significantly worse, but not bad, without the sun. Instead, we get a weird fusion of the two modes, with the expected ground types in Gastro and Krook here, along with the other dynamic duo of Blissey and Corviknight. In the middle of them all is the incredibly unexpected Tauros, which I don't outspeed except with Dragapult. I kind of cheated a little bit with the speed on things like Sneasel. That was unexpected. I guess I got 3 out of 6 right, but Tauros came out of nowhere. No Scrafty? Not even a Ditto? That's fine, I suppose. And doesn't change my initial plan of leading with the Scarf Dragapult to either get off a big hit or U-turn out, depending on what he's got. Good luck and have fun to Chad. And he does, in fact, lead with the Crocodile, which I'm guessing is Scarfed, and clicking Knockoff or getting up rocks makes so much sense. The Knockoff seems too easy. Scarf makes so much sense, and I don't see Intimidate here either, so I'm going to assume that's a Moxie Crocodile. So U-turn actually does a very good chunk, over 40%, and by far my best knockoff switch into Silvally, who eats it up okay. It's still a good trade, obviously. I keep an item. Crocodile is a big problem. Silvally's role is definitely a bit diminished against a non-Sun Venusaur and no Scrafty. U-turn is still super effective against what's in front of me, and I can keep up the momentum. I can go back into Pult if Krook lives, or something else if he switches. That makes a lot of sense to me, and he does swap into the Gastrodon, oddly enough. And from that 23%, it appears to be specially defensive. Still, after the leftovers recovery, I like the odds of Energy Ball KOing, so Vikavolt will be my switch in this time. Not sure if he's aware of the coverage option here, or if he's going to be afraid of webs, which I didn't bring, mostly because of Ditto, but maybe I should have made a spot for them. In the end, Energy Ball is the option, just in case he makes the nice, safe switch into the Pink Menace. I really don't have any reason to do anything but Volt Switch out. I do eat a Toxic first, though, which could be very annoying. In any case, though, as I mentioned before, T-Tar is the switch-in. All this residual is getting to Blissey, which is probably wearing boots. It's down to only 64%, funnily enough. I think it's about time to execute our strategy. Let's go for a substitute. He goes right into Corviknight. Body Press or Iron Head could be coming, so I'd just like to get some nice damage on it. He does taunt into my Rock Slide, which, of course, misses. I had a free Focus Punch here that I had just gotten, and I was probably just considering that Rock Slide had the potential to flinch me. He couldn't because he outspeeds me. I'm really not sure, and I thought maybe Rock Slide would do more damage, maybe. It does no damage at all from the 10% miss. That taunt shows me he's worried about sub-DD, but that isn't what I've got here at all, so perhaps I'm going to try and keep up the illusion. I'm really not sure why I'm still not going Focus Punch, but I'm going to click Rock Slide again on the Bulk Up. Shows an interesting set, and that Rock Slide is going to miss again. Are we going to talk about my luck this season, or never mind? However frustrating it is, I need to pressure out this Corviknight right away, and the best way I can see to do that is to just abandon my substitute, get Vikavolt out here pronto on the very interesting roost, but that's fine. If it's setting up, the least I can do, I think, is cripple it with a Thunder Wave, which, for better or worse, is eaten up by Blissey. Cool tech move, of course, but it's just going to be restored by the Natural Cure. It just isn't that effective overall anyways. Now the faster Volt Switch is going to bring out the T-Tar. We're going to bring Blissey below half as Paralysis actually does something for once. Potentially prevents Charizard from taking a Toxic too, which is very nice. I want to prevent any shenanigans, so I'm going to go for the quicker Taunt. Actually, Corviknight is going to be the one that comes in. I've seen that this is a mono-attacking bulk up Corviknight by this point. Disabling 3 moves is nice, and we could potentially find out the last one right here. I really can't risk it being Iron Head or Body Press, so Vikavolt I think is a pretty good answer to go back into. As he doubles into the Venusaur, revealing it's probably not one of those moves that I'm scared of. It's probably just the Brave Bird. We have a great chance for a paralysis here as he Leech Seeds, and the Thunder Wave also misses. And seriously, I think the T-Wave miss is a little more impactful than anything else that's happened so far. I currently have no way to get around this thing right now, too, and I'm taking 3 sources of residual damage right now. That may have spooked me a little bit, too, as I have a dedicated Venusaur answer. I'm not really sure why, but I went on into Dragapult here. The max ooze damage is, of course, a max roll on modest max special attack Venusaur, which is just outstanding. Another bad roll for your boy. Mantine was the designated switch here. Savali was a decent switch. It outspeeds. He doesn't have the sun that he can set up for himself even. And a quick calc could have shown that the G-Max Vine Lash would KO after that damage too. And I think Dragapult is very important for the Scarf Crocodile, but I make a strange play. I just kind of stand and Fire Blast. It's nice damage, getting a third, but that was the sand that just expired. No sun is up to boost the power of that. It shows max HP on the Venusaur at least, but the Vine Lash residual is just going to take me out. Why did I let Dragapult go down so easily? I really just... That was kind of bad. Mantine doesn't have much of a role in this game without Sun, without Scrafty, so why didn't I just use it for what it was designated for? That Crocodile is just going to play the same role as the Flygon last game now. I don't know. I don't really know what I was thinking here. But I know that Flying Savali is the correct follow-up, and I actually make a really nice read here by switching, U-turning out rather, predicting that he would actually drop the G-Max form and U-turn out. That could have definitely backfired, but unfortunately, with Vikavolt being a good switch here, I still am at 41% after all that residual. That is really racking up, so I figure probably just roost here on the incoming Blissey to kind of tank a little bit of that damage that's coming in. The residual will wear off at some point anyways, and I'm just going to Volt Switch out this time on the Wish, which is pretty interesting, and I decide I'm going to go with a more aggressive option this time with the Sneasel. The things you can switch in would not appreciate a knockoff, which at least saves my butt from things like Scarf Crocodile, and actually switching into Crocodile would be absolutely ideal right about now. Blissey, which actually does end up staying in, will still go down to the knockoff, which is huge. Sneasel's first KO of the season is a good one for sure. It's definitely helpful to make sure that Wish doesn't go off. Second week in a row I KO the Wish user as it is trying to wish itself up, which is nice. Kruk is the very easy switch, and a quick calc shows that Ice Shard does not KO from this range. Ooh boy. Although Stone Edge is the easy click for him, I finally figured out that Mantine doesn't actually do much of anything anymore. So here we go. Stone Edge is often criticized for being unreliable, but it and Dragon Rush have not missed against my team yet this season, so down goes Mantine, who definitely deserved better. Just like Pulse, I played both of those, I think, very poorly. Well, my only real switch-in right now is T-Tar, so Dragapult being gone means this is my only switch-in right now to a Rock move. I can think of no better time to punish a switch-in than with a big Focus Punch right now. Need a big play to get back into it. And that is going to be amazing. I will definitely take that. That Tauros also outsped everything, and it goes down in one hit thanks to a huge Focus Punch. That may have been more optimal to have used that earlier in the match, obviously. But I think that surprise factor came in clutch right here too. That is very nice. Sweet. It is 4-on-4 now. But that Kruk is still an absolute menace. Gastron makes a lot of sense as a switch, and it now prevents whatever mind games would go on with Crocodile for both of us. At least for now. As of this moment, Vikavolt is a pretty good switch-in. Takes the Scald, not that well, but okay, I suppose. I'm down to 30% now, and I need to make another read here. Energy Ball comes very close to taking this thing out, but Corviknight and Venusaur could be very good switch-ins too. Can I risk taking another Scald and sacking this thing for nothing? I think not. I really need to be able to break through Gastrodon, and Energy Ball is one of my only options. Even though Venusaur does come in here, I still appreciate and like that thought process. It makes enough sense to me, at least. I suppose I could have tried to Roost up, but that Toxic really racks up. As of right now, I think Savali is about the only thing I have to break through this thing. I don't take the Sludge Bomb very well at all. I feel like I'm just getting getting hogtied by this thing. The Sludge Bomb doing so much damage. The Vine Lash earlier with all that residual. So, at least now I have a chance to claim Venus or KO. Or I can continue to get ahead of the game by hitting the Corviknight with a Fire Fang. Honestly, multi-attack is 100% the right call. As I outspeed the Corviknight, I can go straight into T-Tar to deal with that Corviknight. Unfortunately, we live in this world where I decided to click Fire Fang instead of multi-attack, and Venusaur gets to pick up another KO. What? Seriously, do I not understand how strong of a move multi-attack is? Base 120 is silly, backed up by Stab. Even if it is a Corviknight, I'm speedy. Alright, that's how it be sometimes. And now Sneasel has to come in to pick up another KO. Nice game for Sneasel already, though. It is a shame that it's had to be used this way. So in comes Krook again, of course, and Vikavolt is my play, so he doesn't spam Earthquake to win. However, Gringo will now end its poor, miserable, chipped existence because close combat is just very good, and that's all he can really needs to spam. You may be able to notice that my two remaining mons are very weak to it. Now 2v3, T-Tar can only roll over and die to close combat, so my only real option is Sneasel coming in. What isn't so obvious, though, is what do I do now? Ice Shard is easy. At -1 defense, Krookodile finally goes down to an Ice Shard. What about other options? If he switches out into, say, Gastrodon, what then? Ice Shard won't pick off Krookodile anymore, and then he gets the chance to just double back in on the Krookodile and just win. Otherwise, he could just chip down the T-Tar or KO the Sneasel to KO my team with EQ. Getting a triple axle on one of those threats could be big, but he's got the number advantage. What do I do here? I think I have to go back to my first ever Draft League match. Not something I was on the channel, but this is back in Gen 7, where I encountered a very similar situation as to this battle. I even had a Sneasel that was part of this situation back then, and I was up against a Rock Polish, +2 now, Sandforce Landorus I. Instead of Ice Sharding, which would have claimed the KO, I opted to go for a knockoff, trying to catch the opponent's Steel-type Bronzong. My opponent stayed in and KO'd me and proceeded to just win the game with the Landorus from there. In this game, I have a Sneasel in front of an opposing Ground-type, which outspeeds my whole team. It's in a position to win, and I can either KO this Mon that's in front of me, or I can break the Steel-type that I outspeed anyways to come in and just get chip on that. It's the same situation, and honestly, that's what most influenced my decision to just click Ice Shard here. And it paid off. Krookodile down. I suppose something I could have considered here is he may have been worried about a Sword Stance coming out from Sneasel, at which point it could very well have been game for me, with a +2 Sneasel just clicking Icicle Crash and Ice Shard 3 times to win. That was his main reasoning in staying in, but either way that leaves us now with a very awkward 2v2. The switch-in is Gastrodon, which is honestly pretty weird to me, considering how easily it beats my T-Tar set. But this was a really awkward sequence of events all in a row, leading up to the end, in which we've both misplayed so many steps along the way. That, honestly, though, is a big one, I think. And this is going to let me get the necessary chip onto Gastrodon, provided I get every hit of Triple Axle to connect. Got another big turn here. Crit the first. 2, 3 hits. Very close to going down. And this Scald, I actually survive, only to go down to the burn. The luck continues, not that it would have made too much of a difference, of course. The only thing this really does is give the KO to T-Tar instead of Sneasel, provided I can actually hit a Rock Slide this time. Which I do. Okay. 1v1, T-Tar and Corviknight. He knows my set. I think he probably has Brave Bird for his last move. This is awkward. I can look back on how to play this properly, but for now I'll go through what I was thinking at the time. My thought was that I couldn't just let him bulk up. Eventually, that would just overwhelm me and beat me. I thought he may want to start with that too, so I just go for Taunt. Pretty simple, except, of course, that he wanted to bulk up and roost and didn't want me to sub, so he taunted first. Easy read, I suppose, but oh well. From here, he is going to bulk up twice as I Rock Slide twice. I wanted to wear him down for the inevitable roost, but didn't realize how quickly those defense boosts would start to stack up on him. At +2, it's about a 50-50 shot or so that I outdamage his roosts with Focus Punch. At this point, he just needs to find chances to bulk up, and he'll inevitably win, whether through his own damage or forcing me to struggle eventually after his faster taunts. And that's all my fault, honestly. For these past 2 turns, I should have been Focus Punching. Those are easy Focus Punches. I need to force him to attack, and Focus Punch does more damage than Rock Slide. At least he doesn't have leftovers. That's the influence of having Magnezone, even without bringing it. But that's about the best he can do right now. Taunt when necessary, he can bulk up and when possible, and then he'll get up to +6/+6. Braveheart actually 2-hit KOs at +6/+6. As for me, I finally realized at this point I should have been focus punching the whole time. I can't flinch, but I can miss, and Rock Slide with stab is only 112.5 base power as opposed to 150. So what if he attacks? He's got Brave Bird, he'll take recoil, and eventually he'll be forced to roost. Call one turn right where he doesn't have the bulk ups, I may have been able to win, but I didn't do that. And instead we're in this very weird spot where he may be able to even outlast my focus punches, where my misplays this season catch up to me in one glorious swoop, dropping to an 0-2 team because I wasn't adequately prepared to play around a weatherless version of his team. We'll probably just have to check some damage rolls here, as I correctly call that he's going to taunt on this turn. It lets me focus punch at least, and that's going to bring him down to 0. Was that some luck on my side? Did T-Tar just... Wow, that was kind of silly. GG to Chad, I guess. I suppose at some point that match would have just become crit fishing anyways, but that was a little quick. I could have played that endgame better, but so could he, and it was just overall an ugly match. We'll take escaping with a 1-0, but this feels more so like an indication that I need to start playing better. Sure, I was taken off guard by the lack of sun, but that really shouldn't be an excuse for my play after getting in-game. There have been plenty of signs and symptoms of this, but I think it may be time for some changes. Maybe tweak my preparations, maybe some practice matches, and as mentioned before, for the first time, I will be making 2 changes to the team as well. Again, these were decided before this match, so keep in mind the performance of members before this match and the overall concerns of synergy on the team. And then the moves may make a little more sense. What are those moves, you may ask? Let's find out next time when we go over Week 4 against the Close Combat Club. But for now, let's talk a little more in-depth about this battle. On his side, Blissey was a pretty effective tank overall, but I was surprised by how much Vikavolt was doing with its chip. Somewhat minimal, sure, but I think it couldn't really handle the pressure Volt Switch was generating on it, as evidenced by its inability to get off a wish. Still, the Toxic pressured the Vikavolt right back throughout the game, which was quite important bringing it down later. Corviknight that's a weird set, honestly. With only Bravebird as coverage, it struggled against things like T-Tar and certainly Colossal if I had brought it, which actually looks stronger and stronger in hindsight. Maybe it's just the team. Taunt was a nice move on it, and it definitely makes sense to have brought Shed Shield to help render the Mag Zone useless. Still, I'm not sure about the set entirely, but it was fine for what he was trying to do, I suppose. Crocodile was such a beast. Great call on the Scarf Crook. Makes me wonder what I can do about these Scarfed ground types the last 2 opponents have brought. The coverage is insane. It is all I could do to stay afloat against its power. Tauros obviously did nothing in the game, but it was a mon that could have taken full advantage of me under preparing for it, underspeeding it with Sneasel and being helpless against its great coverage. Venusaur was cold in its unexpected defensive nature, but I can't help think the extra coverage would have just been better. Weatherball, for example, rendered lots of my checks null, even in or especially the sand. There was a turn there where I was in against it with Vikavolt, and a Weatherball rock type would have just taken me out. Finally, Gastrodon was always going to be a great tank. Its ability to beat T-Tar, I think, makes it bringing in against the Sneasel maybe the biggest misplay of the game. T-Tar wasn't going to be able to do much to Gastro and couldn't get a sub up against it either due to outspeeding it, so that 1v1 is what he should have been aiming for. As for my end, I played Dragapult so poorly. I touched on it before, but without needing to outspeed Venusaur, I could have played it so much more aggressively against the rest of the team, spamming Dracos once Blissey went down, or using it to claim a kill against the Scarf Crocodile, who otherwise outsped my whole team. T-Tar's set basically lived up to its full potential, even without using it against Blissey at all. Focus Punch ended up being such a good call for the massive damage, especially against that Corviknight in the endgame, and Rock Slide was good enough neutral coverage, even if it could miss. I misplayed Silvally for the 3rd week in a row. I just need to be clicking multi-attack, which I didn't do on the Venusaur, despite it being a base 120 stab move. It was such an easy play. It was one of the only ways left to hit the Gastrodon hard, too, but I threw it away. The switch into knockoff was good at least, and the following U-turn was correct, as was bringing it in to respond to Venusaur getting a KO, and the corresponding U-turn was good there too, but the multi-attack no-click was just so bad. I need to be a little more proactive with what I'm doing with it. Similar to the Dragapult though, Mantine was such an easy answer to Venusaur. I cannot believe I went into Dragapult instead. My misplays were all centered around the Venusaur, weren't they? Mantine was kind of useless against everything else, and that would have made the switch even easier, but I just kind of ignored it. Vikavolt was a great call. The set in general was decent, but I got outpredicted with the Energy Ball multiple times. The slow Volt Switch was amazing for the momentum, and T-Wave I think would have been better if it had hit the Venusaur for sure, but maybe fitting sticky webs in there would have been better. Even with the threat of Ditto, only Sneasel would have been seriously affected, and it could have slowed down that Crocodile to have made things like my Sneasel sweeping so much easier. And, of course, the Sneasel, which exceeded all expectations for its power. Base 95 attack isn't great, but it's an amazing stab combination. With max stack adamant, it's so much damage to so many things, and it fulfilled its job as a revenge killer admirably. While doing so much dip to Gastrodon, it went down right after. That'll do it, I think, for this time. Sneasel and T-Tar were obviously the MVPs for this week. They got 3 KOs each, with Crocodile for him, followed by the Venusaur, I think. Close game, crazy game. Let's do the interview. And we're here with the post-match interview with Chad. That was quite the game. How are you feeling?
Yeah, honestly, I thought the game went pretty well. I didn't win, which kind of sucked, but
Sure.
I think it was my best performance so far, and I didn't even bring the kind of core part of my team, or at least part of my team. So
Right.
I'm pretty happy with how it went.
Sure.
There was a little bit of, even without it, I think it was still up in the air who would have actually won.
Yeah, that was a very awkward end game that I at least am glad that it worked out that way. We didn't have to play it out, but let's see. We had the part of your core here. You brought the Blissey Corviknight, which is so scary, and then the Crocodile, Tauros, G-Max, Venusaur, and Gastrodon. So the big question, of course, why no Sun this time?
Well, I mean, I brought Sun the past 2 weeks, and it honestly didn't really do that well. I think Sun's very easy to prepare for. I think Sun's powerful, but obviously, if somebody brings Sun, especially if you know what Pokemon they're going to bring, it's kind of a one-trick pony.
Sure.
And, you on your team, auto weather setter, so I figured you would really prepare for Sun. And, versus your team, I thought I had a lot of counters without having to kind of lean on Sun for offensive power. Like, I think Crocodile was very good on your team.
Absolutely.
I have a good defensive core. Actually, I know Tauros didn't do a lot in the match, but I thought Tauros was really good.
Yeah, a lot of my speed tiers didn't really do anything for it, and then I kind of cheated a little bit, not expecting the Tauros, and I kind of undersped it by a lot of things, so I'm very glad I didn't have to end up dealing with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I didn't run any calcs, but I think, Life Orb, Sheer Force, Tauros is probably pretty strong.
Yeah, it's got really good coverage, too, surprisingly good.
Yeah, I noticed fighting was very good versus your team. Obviously you got a couple of this, but I was hoping for, possible late game fighting move sweep with, Crocodile or Tauros possibly.
Absolutely. We saw kind of the 50-50 there at the end game with Crocodile, where I'd either stay in an Ice Shard or stay in and expect you to switch out, because close combat just devastates the whole team, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the whole reason I stayed in was I was worried you were Sword Dance, which I found out after the fact. But it wasn't. I was aware that I would live if I switched out. It was just I didn't want you to Sword Dance and sweep me.
Absolutely, I think that's totally fair. But if fighting was so good too, though, I know we mentioned it briefly, but there was no Scrafty here, and I was a little bit worried about that thing too.
I thought about bringing Dragon Dance Scrafty, and it probably would have put Tauros on my team.
Sure.
I kind of felt like I needed some sort of relatively fast Pokemon. I know that a lot of your Pokemon outsped it, like Dragapult and Sneasel, or whatever it's called. Scrafty's good, but I didn't want to have to depend on getting a couple of Dragon Dances to set up.
Sure.
In hindsight, Scrafty would have been much better against your team versus Tauros, especially how the match played out. But overall, I think I wanted some sort of no setup required, no choice, reasonable offensive.
Right. I guess I was more worried about Scrafty kind of doing what the Corviknight's role was with the bulk up set there. Eventually, with a fully special defensive Scrafty, having used that myself in the previous season, I know that could have been an absolute pain to try to break through, and I really didn't have great answers for it.
Yeah.
Interesting that and the 2 Intimidate users you had, none of them were there packing Intimidate. That was kind of interesting too. I was considering for a bit doing Adrenaline Orb stuff, but...
Who else runs Intimidate? I know
Scrafty can run it too, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of hoping for a Moxie sweep. The thing I was worried about, the reason I ran Moxie is because you had a couple of fighting resists, and I was hoping that, maybe I could, chip down the fighting resist a little bit, and after a Moxie boost, close combat with Crafty would blow through them.
Sure. As we saw how low the V-Volt got, and eventually that was not a fighting resist at a point in time there, so I think that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The Gastrodon I knew would be a big defensive piece, the other ground type, of course. two ground types when I have two electric types that I had brought both the first 2 weeks. So I think that's a good call, bringing both of those.
Yeah, I was debating between physical or special crafty. Again, with how the match played out, physical probably would have been better, but it seemed like looking at your team, I was actually really worried about Magnezone, and you didn't end up bringing it, which was probably because obviously I prepared for you. I ran Shed Shell and Corbin Item.
Right, and I figure like the Gastrodon was a hard stop to it too. If I did bring it, it would have to be Toxic. So
yeah, and then I think Venusaur did its role pretty well. Basically,
absolutely.
Without Sun, it's not very fast, so I just ran a bulky set. I was hoping G-Max tank a little bit, get a couple kills, which I think is pretty much what it did. So
yeah, absolutely. Leech, it would have been cool to see it get off a synthesis there, and at some point for the longevity, something you wouldn't really expect, but you maybe not get the chance to run that if you're in Sun. That's something that I kind of hate about Venusaur. Sure, it's been given new life with Chlorophyll, but I kind of miss its old defensive role, and it's still good in doing that. You see something similar with Cloyster, where I loved its defensive role, but since it got Shell Smash, that's all it is now. So, very cool.
Well, I mean,
using
just
Venusaur defensively.
Like Cloyster, I think Cloyster's okay defensively. My problem with Cloyster is the special defense is just so low.
For sure,
like, any like relatively strong special defense move that's neutral will pretty much one-shot it.
Sure.
But...
Like it doesn't even run spikes anymore, and
yeah.
So well, back in the day, way back, Gen 2, Cloyster was king. It was definitely way up there, but far cry from
But
that.
I mean, like, with my Venusaur, there was a couple of turns where I was thinking about synthesis. The problem was you had stand up, like a lot because of your Tyranitar.
True, yeah.
25%.
I kind of didn't ever really have a great offensive answer. I was just kind of hoping that the Venusaur would be kind of an all-out thing and to be able to like chip it a little bit and then respond with something else. So I'm very glad I was able to actually get rid of it because that would have been an absolute pain to break through.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could have ran a more defensive set, but I really feel like... So the reason I ran HP, right, is because, obviously, G-Max doubles the HP.
Sure, synergy.
More HP, 2 for the price of 1, so... but yeah.
Fair enough. And then the Blissey, too, so you weren't able to get the Wish off into something else there, but I suppose that makes enough sense with what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I think the Blissey, the turn where Blissey died, it was kind of a 50-50. Like, I don't know if you thought it was but
it for sure was, yeah.
Like, would I switch out, would I stay in? And unfortunately, I picked the wrong choice. But I think my Blissey was relatively useful.
Yeah, I thought Markov was probably just the best middle ground play, but Blissey getting back up full, I can't really afford that. So,
yeah, again, I was really worried about you being Sword Advanced, which I you weren't, but like, was that your Sneasel?
Yes.
That was out? I think I was like, I was worried, like a lot of the, you saw 2 of my Pokemon die to Sneasel essentially, and both of those times the reason I kept them in was because I was worried it would Sword Dance up.
Right. That was a big issue I had in my previous match where I was just like, oh, well, the Flygon could be scarfed, but what if it isn't? If it's mixed, I'm screwed. And I ended up playing around that a little too much, and I got in my own head. Well, awesome. This was a very interesting match. So this was not what I expected at all from the battle. So very cool. Like, seeing the Tauros at all, I thought, okay, he could either bring like the squad he's brought the first couple weeks, or he could mix it up because I thought the Gastrodon, the Crocodile were very good against me. I thought Scrafty was great too. Shiftry in the Sun, and you end up bringing that was the one thing I wasn't prepared for, and here it is.
Yeah, I mean, Tauros, like great coverage, pretty fast, pretty strong. Like I think it could have been a good cleaner, but obviously you bopped me with the Focus Punch, so I didn't get to do anything.
Hey, you're so welcome. So, any other comments you have on the match before we wrap things up?
No, I mean, overall, I think it was a pretty good match. We had a lot of 50-50s. Obviously, there was some hacks. You missed a couple rock slides. I got crit at the end, but,
I'll kind of go over the match later and kind of see how many of those actually mattered. Like, maybe the rock slides damage getting on there didn't matter too much, or maybe even the burn didn't matter, like, at all there either. And maybe eventually, if just clicking Focus Punch would have won it for me, but... I look forward to the calcs on that.
The one that I think mattered from your side was you missed a Thunder Wave at one point.
That's right,
think that was like the one that kind of stood out as being pretty hacksy, and then obviously the crit at the end was very big. But
sure, I think I agree. Those are probably the 2 that'll stand out the most.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it was very fun, very well played, and I think you're starting to get back on the right track, kind of moving away from just sun. People have to see that if these other threats are good against you, you have to prepare for them, because you know what might happen. You might not get that crit at the end.
Yeah.
Then what?
Well, yeah, but yeah, I'm still 0-3, so not the best record.
You just have to make it in the top 6.
Yeah.
And I know we've had a very tough schedule to start with. So
Yeah.
have playing. I want to say the top 3 players from last season all in a row at the beginning of the match. And if you're getting better and better with them, I see a very strong finish for you.
Yeah.
So that'll wrap it up with us. Next week, I want to say we're going to end up playing the Close Combat Club and John. So please tune in for that one. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, it'll probably be 100 turns.